Peace be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Many of Jesus' disciples were listening, said, "This saying is hard. Who can accept it?" Since Jesus knew his disciples were murmuring about this, he said to them, "Does this shock you? What if you were to see the Son of Humanity ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit that gives life, while the flesh is to no avail. The words I have spoken to you are spirit and life, but there are some of you who do not believe." Jesus knew from the beginning the ones who would not believe and the one who would betray him. And he said, "For this reason I have told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted by God." As a result of this, many of his disciples returned to their former way of life and no longer accompanied him. Jesus then said to the 12, "Do you also want to leave?" Simon Peter answered him, "Teacher, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and are convinced that you are the Holy One of God." The Gospel of the Lord. After I graduated high school, I spent my college summers working at a camp that was designed to have families come and be on retreat with each other for a whole week. The programming was wonderful, and the camp itself was simply beautiful. One of the priests who was instrumental in a lot of the programming and keeping the vision alive for the camp had this grand idea to make a chapel outdoors. The chapel on the camp grounds, a structure built many years before, was great, but he wanted to make a chapel under the canopy of tall oak trees so people could have services standing right in God's creation instead of always having to have Mass in a structure built on a concrete slab. So a huge group of us college kids gathered before camp season, and the idea was for us to spend a week at the camp working to create this outdoor chapel by day and pray and sleep by night. To provide seating and make a natural stone altar, our job was to haul huge shell rocks from a creek bed. The creek bed was about 200 yards away, and the shale had to be carried through the creek and up a steep embankment to make that 200-yard trek. Some of us even had to make slings to go around our shoulders and attach ropes so we could drag the rocks up the embankment. The manual labor to move all of that stone was enough to make anyone say we were crazy, and the 12-hour days of hauling it was more than exhausting. Throughout the week, many from our group called it quits. At first they were on board, but once they realized how many stones were needed, thousands and thousands, they just couldn't find a reason to sacrifice their energy for it. Each time someone called it quits, the priest simply thanked them, let them go, and started working harder himself. Well, from the 23 of us that started the project, during lunch on the 4th day, we looked around and we were down to 6. My friend Adam asked the priest, "What are you going to do if more quit?" The priest looked at us and shared how he felt called to build this natural sanctuary for the people. And if everyone left, he felt so called to finish it, he would do it all by himself. Right there, inspired by his calling, the 6 of us made the decision that we would push through the pain and hard labor to get the project done. It proved to be one of the most challenging physical weeks of our lives, but we pushed through. We didn't stick with it simply because we said we would. We didn't stay and help because we felt bad that this priest would have to do it alone if we all jumped ship. We stuck through to the end because we all saw and believed in his vision. We all knew this space would eventually become something beautiful, and in our hearts we knew what this space would mean for the people that would use it. The priest died many years ago, but today that stone chapel remains and has been a space for thousands of people to experience God right in the very creation that God provided under their feet. It felt that for the 6 of us, it was a shining moment in our lives. We persevered when we were challenged physically and mentally. Pushed to our limits, we persevered when it would have been way easier to quit. And that's probably true for many of us during challenging times. Sometimes it's just way easier to quit. I'm reminded of that experience when I hear the story in the gospel today. Just like the priest asking us to see his vision and enduring some hard days to get there, Jesus is calling his disciples to follow him. Jesus is asking them to trust in his vision that they were on the road to God's kingdom. And Jesus didn't trick the disciples into coming on board, saying it would be some fabulous job with all sorts of perks. I think back to the story of Jesus walking along the Sea of Galilee, gathering disciples. He said, "Follow me, but if you do, you have to leave your way behind. You have to leave your jobs and your homes. You have to leave behind your possessions, the security of your routines and your comfort zones in order to make this journey with me." Jesus was crystal clear from the get-go that it would be a challenging road. It would not be easy, and it certainly would not be a glamorous life full of fame and fortune. We fast forward to today's gospel, where we find that a lot of people who were following Jesus decided to walk away. They decided that the sacrifices they were making in order to follow Jesus were more trying than they could bear. It was enough for many to say, "Jesus, we just can't do it anymore. This is where our journey ends with you." A couple of significant things happen here. First, when they walked away, Jesus did not run after them. He didn't say, No, come back. We can change some things to make it easier for you. I can offer you vacation pay. How about a company car? What can I do to make this easier for you?" This is significant because Jesus did not change the vision or lower the bar of expectation of his ministry in order to have more people follow him. Jesus was steady in how he was leading the disciples, and he was not willing to water down the ministry just to gain more people. If it wasn't enough that people were deserting Jesus and his vision, Jesus turns to the remaining disciples and asks, "Are you going to leave too?" And here is where we see Peter emerge in his shining moment. Peter replies, "Lord, to whom shall we go? If not by your side, and if not on this journey, where will we go?" Peter isn't saying, "We have nothing better to do, so I guess we'll stick around here." This is Peter's shining moment because his faith and trust in Jesus is so strong that he stays, despite the hard road they are on and the teachings they must understand and live. Peter is saying, "Jesus, we see your vision. We believe you are taking us to the place you say you are taking us. There is no other place where we want to be. To whom shall we go?" I was once sitting with some friends who were telling me of some very difficult times in their marriage, and they were sharing their experience working with a therapist to help process the problems they were having. 7 years ago, their son was killed in a tragic car accident, and the stress and grief that they each had caused a huge fracture in their relationship. They argued often, and they found it very difficult to work on their relationship as married people because of the immense grief they each had in losing their child. When it seemed they were stuck and not being able to answer questions that might remedy their problems, the wife took a deep breath, and fearful of what his answer might be, she asked her husband, "You're not thinking of ending this marriage, are you?" In his response to her, he quoted this very gospel. He said, "My love, to whom shall I go? There is no other place I will find another you, and there is no person that I love as deeply as I love you. So no, I do not want to call it quits." Right there in the most difficult low in their marriage, emerged their shining moment as two people deciding that even though they had problems and grief, they would push through because their love was greater. They decided that their union and commitment to each other was the vision they wanted to follow, despite the hardships they were enduring. Just like a group of us were called to build an outdoor stone cathedral, just like Jesus was called to lead the people into God's kingdom, and just like two people were called to let love be a driving force in their marriage during difficult times, we are all being called to something. What is God calling you to do? What is God asking of you? Is God calling you to bury resentment and jealousy so you can experience a deeper and more loving relationship with a friend? Is God calling you to forgive someone in your life? Maybe God is asking you to free the pain in your heart by saying, I forgive you. Is God asking you to believe in yourself, asking you to look inside to realize you have the courage to get help to overcome an addiction, and that the sacrifices you make along the way to overcome it will change your life? What is our shining moment? None of this is easy. There is good news, though. We don't have just one opportunity to have our own shining moment. God does not have the expectation that we are perfect, nor does God think that all of our moments will be shining moments. Peter, for example, messed up on many turns as both a disciple and a friend. Notice, though, that Jesus never turned his back on Peter. And on top of that, Jesus never thought that Peter was inadequate at being a good person or inadequate of being a good disciple because he wasn't perfect. And for however many times we fall short, sometimes despite our own feelings that we are sometimes inadequate or sometimes feeling we are not good enough, God keeps calling on us. God keeps calling us to have shining moments when the road is challenging, filled with grief, or just downright hard. And when Mass is done today and you go back to your challenging job tomorrow, or you go home to meet the person you find it hard to forgive, or you go where you have to sit face to face with something difficult like an addiction, whatever your challenging road might be, what vision of something greater will you hold on to in order to persevere? And even more, we have to keep asking ourselves this question: what will be our next shining moment?
Our God, and all will see how great How great is our God? Can you say with me, how great is our God? Say with me, how great is our God? And the world will see how great is our God. Oh, then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! This is my song. How great you are! How great thou art! How great thou art! Oh, how great is our God? Can you say with me, how great? And this world will see you're an awesome God. How great thou art, our God. Oh, how great is our God? Is our God. Can you say with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. Oh, how great is our God. Can you say with me, how great? Oh, we'll see how great how great is my God? Yes. Can you say